Thanks for being here. We're talking about what's in our medicine cabinet. Why is what we just saw important?
Well, especially in that population, we were going to senior living facilities. And if you think about our senior population, especially in those locations, they have limited mobility many times. They have limited access to transportation. So even for them just to participate in a national take back day like the DEA does, they don't have access to those things. It's very hard to get to one of those locations. The other thing is seniors many times have lots of medication changes. So they go into the hospital, medications get changed, something isn't working, their doctor makes a change. In general, they have a lot of medication changes. And so there's many times medications sitting around that they no longer need to use, but it's very easy to get confused about those medications. So let's say the doctor increases the dose of a medication. If they don't get rid of that old bottle, they could be taking more of a dose than they really need. They could accidentally overdose, get things mixed up. You know, how many little round white pills are there?
Right.
So it's really an issue for the senior population. And again, from the perspective of diversion that we're focusing on tonight, that if they have family members or friends, grandchildren coming in, if there's anything that they're not using that could be abused or misused, we want to get that out of the home so that it's not an issue and they're not having to worry about that.
Do you find that, I mean, do you tell the people that you're training that it's actually important to do what we just saw there?
Absolutely. I mean, the students that you saw in the video are some of my students, and we talk about how important it is to educate patients about proper medication disposal, making sure you're not taking expired medicines, and to really be careful with what's around the house. Also, from a safety perspective, thinking about children. Kids love things that rattle and shake, and that's what medicines are in a bottle. They rattle and shake, and so you even see many accidental poisonings of children because of medications that are left out. Sometimes they are needed, but many times if they're not, it's just best to get rid of them.
I think the agent said treat your medicine cabinet like it's your liquor cabinet.
Exactly, right. So if you think about your liquor cabinet, you don't want your little kids getting into it and accidentally tasting it. You know, in those smaller bodies, alcohol and medicines are much more toxic at lower levels, so a little bit can do a lot of harm. If you think about your teenagers and young adults who are kind of in that exploratory phase and maybe trying out some things maybe that they shouldn't, liquor, and again, medicines, we know that there's things called farming parties where they will take medicines out of the medicine cabinet, go to a party, dump them in a bowl, throw them back with some alcohol just to see what happens.
I'm gathering there's not a tractor and hay bales involved in this farm party you speak of.
No, farm as in pharmacy.
Got it.
So yeah.
Not to make light of a very serious
Right.
situation. I'm sure all the drugs, we want to take them all seriously. Are there some that are more dangerous perhaps or more addictive that we should particularly watch out for? Certainly
anything that has that addictive quality to it. So narcotics, any kind of narcotic pain medicine like morphine, Percocet, Oxy, anything like that that's addictive. And then stimulants. We're seeing a lot more treatment of ADHD appropriately, but there's a lot more stimulants out there now that we're more aware of it. And we've got medications, so things like Ritalin and methylphenidate, those things are very addictive as well, and we want to be careful with those. And then some of our stimulants and some of our anti-anxiety meds, things like Xanax or maybe some sleep aids that, again, many times have very legitimate uses, but if we're not using them, can cause problems.
I think a lot of people would say, if I've got this prescription from my doctor, it's meant for good. How can it be bad? Is there a psychology there that's dangerous, or maybe even some chemical things we need to know about?
Well, certainly with narcotics, they affect a lot of different things in the brain. So they help with pain, but they also stimulate that part of the brain that makes us feel good and gives us some euphoria. With some of the other medications, again, a lot of it depends, like what they were talking about earlier. There's a lot that has to do with our genetics as with regards to how likely we are to get addicted to something. There's socioeconomic factors. There's lots of different things that play into whether or not something becomes addictive. And we even know that when patients are being treated for pain, if their pain is not being well controlled, we can see something that we call a pseudo-addiction, where if we just treat their pain properly, they'll be fine. But because they're in so much pain, they're doing some things that look like addictions. So they're increasing their dose to try and control their pain. And they might be trying to get more medicine before they're supposed to and things like that.
Okay, I know you guys can't get to everybody with the program that we just saw there. Tell us, what are the proper disposal methods?
Sure. So obviously the DEA has been hosting National Take Back Days twice a year, and those are great options. In the St. Louis area, we are very fortunate to have another option that's available pretty much every day of the year. These are medication disposal boxes that are in police precincts, and they are available anonymously and free. You can go and drop them off. There's 35 or so in the metro area that are taking back medications whenever you want to go in and drop them off, and then they dispose of them properly by incinerating them.
You don't can't I just dump them in my sink or flush them down the toilet or throw them in the garbage?
You could, and we hear that quite a bit, and that was really the old recommendations, and we're trying to re-educate people about that. We know, based on some AP studies in the past, that those things are starting to show up in our rivers and streams, and we are concerned that if we don't start to do something to change that trend, that those amounts will get higher and higher, and then we'll start to have more effects in our food chain and maybe even potentially to humans. And so we're really trying to say incineration is the best way to keep it even from getting into the water supply.
Dr. Amy Tiemeier.